Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 21 of On Air. I am so thrilled to be introducing our season 14 artist lineup today. Starting this year at Lux, or this season at Lux, we will be unified under one theme across our whole campus. Each of our artists and resident artists and regional artists will be exploring their own unique ideas, concepts, and processes within that theme. This will allow Lux and the community to really dive into the contemporary relevant issues while considering them from a variety of perspectives and hear a diversity of voices. Our upcoming season, titled A New Territory, explores issues of migration. Humans, animals, and plants have migrated for this planet since the beginning of Earth's history. But what happens when we create boundaries? Boundaries and borders exist on many different levels and have continuously moved throughout history. These lines can be physical and non-physical, man-made or natural. Starting small, there are the lines that define plots of land and distinguish the property from one neighbor to the next. But then there are boundaries between rural and urban environments, where distinct differences developed between these territories that include social, economic, and political structures. And then there are larger boundary lines that divide states, countries, and continents. We as a planet have continuously evolved under these borders. Flora and fauna species have developed their own unique traits based on the locations they settled, and humans have developed their own unique cultures. But through it all, migration continues to be a big part of life. People migrate from rural to urban areas or move to different states or countries for a wide variety of reasons. Animals migrate lands and oceans to feeding and mating grounds, and plants have found ingenious ways to migrate through their seeds. A new territory explores the structures that exist around the movement of bodies, be it human, animal, or plant. Some questions we will be considering this season are: what happens to the construction of identity in cross-cultural territories? What does othering mean in that construction of identity? How do physical and non-physical borderlines influence the movement of people, flora, and fauna? And what social, political, economic systems influence the lived experience of migrating people? There's such an important history and conversation around migration, and I can't wait to explore these topics with the amazing artists that we have coming this season. So starting off in our artist in residence, we have Cosmo White. Born in Jamaica in 1982, White is based in Atlanta, Georgia, and Montego Bay, Jamaica. He received his MFA from the University of Michigan, his postbachelorate from Maryland Institute College of Art, and his BFA from Bennington College in Vermont. And in 2021, White will be participating in Prospect 5 in New Orleans. White explores the liminal spaces created by migration. He investigates the effects that leaving one culture behind and trying to assimilate to another has on the construction of identity. His personal experiences as a societally designated Black man born in Jamaica acts as a starting point of departure for his work. He critiques concepts of nation building, migrant displacement, assimilation, appropriation, and the impact this complicated history has on diasporic communities. White's process includes drawing, performance, sculpture, and installation. In his drawings, White uses references to cultural identity through his use of gold leaf in order to explore displacement, the societal effects of mining gold, and the shaping of community through these histories. He mixes common objects with archival imagery and integrates elements of kitsch in his sculptural work as a way to consider the function of domestic space in relation to hospitality and the reality of the migrant experience. Our next artist is Carlos Martel. Born in Cuba in 1989, Martel is based out of New York City and Havana, Cuba. Martel graduated in 2009 from the National Academy of Fine Arts in San Alejandro in Havana. And Martel has shown and performed at places such as the Venice Biennale. His work is also in public collections such as the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum in New York and the Shelley and Donald Rubin Foundation in New York as well. Carlos Martel is a performance artist who uses his body to address the restrictions and limitations within the lived experience of the Black male immigrant body. The ephemerality of performance points towards the immediacy that his topics and ideas pose. Like the performance, there is a point where an identity under threat ceases the ability to continue. The passage of time shows the fragility of continuing to exist. Martel shows the perpetual threat on the body and the identity that is persistent in the systems that are in place in our society through his performances. Martel approaches these topics from the non-Western migrant experience and takes a specific look at the identity of the Black male within that conversation. He talks about the invisibility of the migrant and Black body within our society. These bodies have distinct identities, but because of their invisibility, they are forced to assimilate to notions of tradition, culture, and belonging, often enforced through the use of systems of violence, ostracization, and displacement. His safety within his performance is constantly threatened, but in an act of resistance, Martel uses the confrontational element of his nude to stake a claim on the space he occupies. He fears, he bleeds, he lives. Our next artist is Beatrice Cortez, born in El Salvador in 1970 and based in Los Angeles. Cortez received an MFA in arts from the College Institute of Arts and a PhD in literature and cultural studies from Arizona State University. Cortez is a recipient of the Artadia Los Angeles Award and the inaugural Freeze Live Water Sculpture Prize, and the California Community Foundation Fellowship for Visual Arts. Beatrice Cortez is represented by Commonwealth and Council in Los Angeles. Cortez utilizes sculpture and installation to examine the deep-rooted histories, cultures, and identities of those who have faced forced migration. She explores a diverse range of perspectives of individuals from Latin America, the United States, and even her own personal experiences of displacement to discover how these systems affect the construction of memory. Based on the writings of philosopher Gilles Deleuze, Cortez's work explores themes related to multiple temporalities, simultaneity, and speculative futures. She most commonly works with metal, challenging gender norms and exploring the flexibility that welding allows for her creations. Her works are often stitched together, building installation-based objects that recall indigenous histories, melded with evolved and contemporary human and Latin American stories. These objects are filled with historical allusions, personal memory, cultural symbols, and harsh modern realities. Next is Bossy Ericom, born in 1983 and based in New York City. Khan was a recipient of the Brick Cologne Brown Art Prize and the Joan Mitchell Painters and Sculptors Grant in 2019. Their work was recently acquired by the Solomon R. Guggenheim and Cadist San Francisco. They received an MFA from Cornell University and a BFA from the University of North Texas. Khan discusses modes of representation that concern the identity of the other within a Western context. Born in the United States, Khan identifies as a queer femme Muslim American. Through the use of fashion, photography, textile, and music, Khan explores how assimilation becomes part of the concealment of identity. These materials and concepts are combined in the form of sculpture and performance. Approaching their work with queer theory in mind, Khan discusses how concepts of normativity function as forms of alienation, displacement, and forced assimilation. The heteronormative functions as a form of surveillance over the queer body. In order to break free and challenge these practices, Khan's work becomes a collage of their own identities. By combining historical and contemporary cultural markers, Khan's sculptures, installations, and performances challenge these systems through an assertion of their own existence belonging within society. Closing out our A New Territory season and as artist in residence is Guillermo Galindo. Born in Mexico City in 1961, he is now based out of the Bay Area. Galindo's work has been performed and shown at major music festivals, concert halls, museums, and art exhibits throughout the United States, Latin America, Europe, and Asia. Galindo has been commissioned to write music for UNAM Symphony Orchestra in Mexico City and Oakland Symphony Orchestra and Choir. As an experimental composer and artist, Galindo activates found objects in his cultural instruments. His work focuses on humanitarian issues along the border. Collecting materials recovered from sites of displacement, Galindo creates sculptures that are brought to life through performance, as well as through participation of the audience. His performance incorporates elements of sound, intending to represent the voices of the invisible and removed. While their bodies are no longer present, their presence continues to be felt. Galindo explores the movement of indigenous people from both the United States and Mesoamerican cultures. His work considers how systems of both forced and limited migration results in the construction of a new identity for these groups. Galindo's recent work challenges the notions of boundaries from an ecological perspective. In these new pieces, he interprets the existence of flora and fauna along borderlines. And now I would like to introduce to you our regional artists that will be exhibiting in our Linda Formo Brandes Gallery in our Education Pavilion. Starting off our new territory season in the Brandes Gallery is regional artist Beatrice Cortez. Her work is about the intersectional space of cross-cultural identity. Erste is a Turkish-American artist working on the United States-Mexico border. As such, her work is a representation of the identity created in the in-between spaces, with a critical look at the traditions and the culture she has experienced, specifically as they relate to religion, gender, and customs. Erste creates installation work that questions social and political platforms. As part of the narrative, her ceramics are created using Turkish techniques, and the clay is harvested from Mexican soil, which represents two of her identities. Erste was born in 1979 in Izmir, Turkey, and currently lives between San Diego and Ensenada, Mexico. She has recently exhibited at the Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego, the San Diego Art Institute, SOFA Chicago, Miami Red Dot Art Fair, and the Los Angeles Art Fair. Next, we have Tara Krynek. The body of work that we will have at Lux, titled the Lima, Peru 1979 Projects, is about the intersection of the revolutionary context of the 1979 Lima, Peru, and her own identity. Krynek was born that year in Peru and adopted from an orphanage. This project is a reconstruction of the Peruvian history of that year and Krynek's research or search for her own identity and place within that history. Using archival imagery, she projects photographs that are intersected with by her own body and thus create a self-portrait. The use of her body is also a reference to the inherent trauma violence leaves on the body. Krynek is now based out of Los Angeles and is currently Associate Professor of Art at Pitzer College in Claremont. She has widely exhibited both nationally and internationally, such as at Honor Fraser Gallery in Los Angeles, Houston Center for Photographs, SF Camera Works, Philadelphia Photographic Arts Center, the National Museum of Women in the Arts, at Photo Madrid, Photo London, amongst many more. Joining us in the new year is Jana Kazna. Having lived on both sides of the San Diego-Tijuana border, Kaznel's incredibly detailed and large-scale drawings investigate cultural history and the migration in her family tree. Through the use of landmarks and cultural markers, Kaznel develops maps that tell the story of her family and her family's movement. She uses a systematic approach in order to understand the impact movement and space have on identity. Kaznel is based in San Diego, but lived in Tijuana for many years. She teaches at Miracosta College, and she has exhibited at the Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego, the San Diego Museum of Art, and the Tijuana Culture Center. Next is Amir H. Fala. Fala's work is about the different stories that exist within immigrant identities. Fala paints portraits depicting objects and fabrics that represent the identity of his subject. Leaving out facial features and creating a universal and gender-neutral body, each portrait focuses on the cultural markers that represent the identity of his subject. While each portrait is an intimate look at the individual and items that tell us more about who that individual is, Fala's body of work expands upon a larger conversation about the hybrid immigrant identity within the United States. Fala was born in Iran and grew up in Virginia. He is now based out of Los Angeles. He has shown widely nationally and internationally at places such as Mocha Tucson in Arizona, Mykonos in Greece, Tel Aviv in Israel, Museum of Art and History in Lancaster, California, Shulamit Nazarian in Los Angeles, Miyako Yoshinaga Gallery in New York, and the San Diego Art Institute. He is also in public art collections such as the Perez Art Museum in Miami. Omar Pimienta will close out our A New Territory season in the Brandes Gallery. Pimienta's work is heavily influenced by extensive research and focuses on different narratives around immigration, deportation, and citizenship. Pimienta's interdisciplinary work calls on the injustices and problematic approaches existent in social, political, and economic systems along border cultures. For his exhibition at Lux, he is investigating the history of waterways and their relationship to cross-national communities. Pimienta was born in Tijuana in 1978, and he lives and works between San Diego and Tijuana. Pimienta has a PhD in literature and an MFA from the University of California, San Diego, as well as a BA in Latin American Studies from SDSU. He has exhibited both nationally and internationally at spaces such as Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego, the 5th Transborder Biennial with the El Paso Museum of Art, at Mocha Tucson in Arizona, as well as Oceanside Museum of Art, participated in a Pacific Standard Time LA exhibition, Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach, and the Paul Getty Museum in Los Angeles. So these are our artists that are coming up in our next season, and I'm so excited to welcome them and hear their stories, hear their voices, and together with the community, and you learn more about what they have to say and get to see their amazing art and participate. And I very much look forward to it. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you next week.